Welcome to the Quotidian Theatre Company. First up is a stage adaptation of Anton Chekhov's short story, A Little Trick. Following an intermission will be Brian Friel's Afterplay. Please ensure that all electronic devices are turned off now. Please note that brochures are available in the lobby for our 15th anniversary season. Our subscription rate, which can save you as much as $40, expires October 31st. Thank you.
Time of a bright winter day. There was a hard, bitter frost. It was so cold that tiny ice crystals had formed on Nadia's temples and upper lip. Top of a tall mountain with Nadia on my arm. From where we stood to the bottom, there stretched a long, sloping expanse which glistened like a mirror in the sun. Let's let down now. Nadyezhda Petrovna, just one time? I promise you, we will both survive without a scratch. But Nadia was very afraid. To her, this expanse from her tiny skates to the bottom of the icy mountain seemed a horrible, immeasurably deep abyss. When I only suggested sitting on the sled, she looked down. Her heart sank, her breathing stopped. What if she were to fly into the abyss? She would die. Certainly, she would lose her mind. I beg you, there's nothing to fear. You must understand, this is cowardice, pure and simple. Nadia finally gave in, but it was clear that she truly feared for her life. I placed her pale, trembling body on the sled, wrapped my arms around her, and we hurtled into the abyss. The sled took off like a shot. The howl of the wind hit us in the face, whistled in our ears with such a fury that it seemed to want to rip our heads from our shoulders. The force of the wind was so great that we couldn't draw breath. It was as if the devil himself had us in his clutches, dragging us howling into hell. Everything around us blurred into a single long, icy track. One more moment, and we would surely perish. I love you, Nadia! The sled began to slow down. howl of the wind and the drone of the runners became less terrifying. We could breathe again. Finally, we reached the bottom. Nadia was neither dead nor alive. She was as white as a ghost, barely breathing. I helped her from the sled.
There is no way I will ever do that again. Not for anything in the world. I almost died.
After a while, she regained her senses, but I could see the question in her eyes. Was it I who spoke those 4 words? Or was it just the wind playing a little trick on her? It was clear this mystery gave her no peace. Were those words actually spoken or not? Yes or no? This was a matter of self-esteem, honor, life, happiness. A very important question. The most important question in the world. Nadia was sad, impatient, and absent-minded, staring at my face for some answer, waiting for me to speak. What emotions played out on that dear face. I could see how she was struggling with herself, needing to say something, to ask something, but not able to find the words. This was so awkward for her, so horrible, it was keeping her from happiness. Time, she studied my face. And he even paid close attention to my careless, indifferent chatter. Did you know that? Did you know that Eskimos have 30 different ways to say the word snow? It seemed that her entire being, even down to her muff and cap, expressed her total bewilderment. These questions were written on her face.
What is the matter with me? Who spoke those words? Or am I just hearing things?
This uncertainty tortured her. Her patience was wearing thin, and she even stopped answering my questions. Nadia. I think I heard that 90% of icebergs are actually under the water. I could see that she was on the verge of tears. Shouldn't we be heading home?
But I love this sledding. Why don't we try it one more time?
She loves this sledding. Yet, as before, she was pale and trembling as she sat on the sled, barely able to breathe from terror. As we set off for the third time, I could see that she was keeping a close eye on me, carefully watching my lips. But at the midpoint of the descent, I put a handkerchief to my mouth, coughed, and said, "I love you, Nadia!" So, the mystery remained a mystery. Nadezhda was silent. She was lost in thought. As I walked her home, her step grew slower in the hopes that I might say these words to her. I could see how she was struggling inside. It took all her strength to keep from saying,
"It cannot be the wind that spoke these words. And I don't want it to have been the wind."
A few mornings later, a note was delivered.
If you want to go sledding today, stop by and get me.
Signed, Nadia. And from that morning, Nadia and I would go sledding every day. And each and every time, flying down that mountain, I would utter the words, "I love you, Nadia." Soon, she became addicted to these words. Like they were wine or morphine. She couldn't live without them. And while it was true that flying down that mountain was just as horrifying as before, now, the terror and danger, it seemed to bring a certain enchantment to these words. Words. Words which still tortured her soul. In Nadezhda's mind, there were still only two suspects, the wind and yours truly. Which one of the two was confessing love, she did not know. But it seemed that she no longer cared. Well, when one is very thirsty, the shape of the glass one drinks from hardly matters. One certain noontime, I set out sledding, alone. And I spotted Nadezhda, searching for me. Then, she bravely climbed up the mountain. Now, this was really terrifying. To sled alone, she was as white as the snow, trembling, walking as if she were headed for the gallows. Determined. without a backward glance. She had decided to find out once and for all if she would hear these amazing, sweet words if I were not there to speak them. She was pale, her mouth open in horror as she sat on the sled. She bid a final farewell to this life and set off into the abyss. Did Nadia hear these words? I have no idea. I only saw how she rose from the sled, weak and completely exhausted. And it was written on her face that she herself did not know if she heard something. The terror she felt flying down the mountain alone took away her ability to hear, to distinguish sounds, to understand. But the month of March arrived, and with it, springtime. The warmth of the sun began to caress our faces as our icy mountain grew darker, lost its luster, and finally melted. Poor Nadezhda had nowhere to hear these words, and no one to speak them, for the wind was silent. And I was planning to leave for St. Petersburg for a very long time, perhaps forever. A day or two before my departure, I sat in the twilight in my little garden, which was separated from Nadia's garden by a tall fence with big wooden slats. It was still quite cold. There were patches of snow on the ground, and the trees had not yet come to life, but the smell of springtime was in the air as the birds noisily settled in for their night's rest. I walked over to the fence. And for the longest time, just gazed through a space between the boards into Nadia's garden. She finally came out onto the porch and turned her sad, tortured face to the sky. The springtime wind hit her directly in her pale, melancholy face, reminding her of the wind which howled past us on the mountain when she heard those 4 words. Her face grew sadder as a tear rolled down her cheek. Then the poor girl reached out with both arms, as if begging the wind to just please bring these words back to her just one more time. So I waited for a gust of wind, and then said in a whisper, "I love you, Nadia." Dear God, how she reacted. She cried out, a smile lit up her face. She reached out with both arms to meet the wind, happy, full of joy, and so very beautiful. And I went inside to finish packing. Oh, this was all a very long time ago. Nadia is married. Whether it was arranged or she fell in love, it doesn't matter. She married the secretary of the Nobility Council. She's already had 3 children. But the memory of the time we spent together on that mountain, when the wind brought her the words, "I love you, Nadia," will not be forgotten. For her, it was the happiest, most beautiful moment of her life. As for me, even though I've grown older, I still do not understand why I said those words. Why I played this little trick.